G'day, in the brewery today, mucking around, upgrading maybe, modifying the G40 just to make it easier for me to use on a brew day. And one of the first things people have been doing is adding a ball valve or a tap, as you might call them, to the outlet at the bottom of the sight glass where you rinse the vessel at the end of the day. And it is handy to have a tap there for rinsing. As I've explained in other videos though, I don't want that sticking out. That adds an extra over 4 inches, 5 inches sticking out of the side of my G40. My G40 gets moved around a lot. I could get bumped by the kids parking their bikes in the garage, or I could knock it off. So yeah, I didn't want that permanently on the side of my G40. So I had a little think about it, and while I'm sort of nearly quite happy to unplug the little plug that comes with it and just screw in a barbed fitting and a little bit of hose and one of my thumb screw valves on it at the end of the day to help and aid in cleaning, I thought I had these hanging around. I was just going through my stuff. These are for a 3V system I'm sort of putting together for a bit of fun. TriClamp. And I thought if I screw that in, that's only sticking out that far. Oh, with the end cap on, it's going to be a tiny little bit further, and that probably won't get in the way anywhere near as much as that would. So of course I'm going to use some thread tape, and we'll screw that on the bottom, and I'll show you some other fittings, because once I've got that on there, there's the end cap with the seal, and you use the TriClamp to clamp the end cap on. That's when you want it closed, of course. Or you could use a barbed fitting like that and have a bit of a hose and a little thumb screw valve or something on there. Or you can use two of these, one into the vessel and then one to actually have your tap on it. So at the end of the day when you're cleaning, you can just clamp that on. I'll show you on the vessel, might be a bit easier to see. As I said earlier, it might be easier for some people just to leave the normal plug that comes in it and screw in a barb and just use a bit of hose. But I had these fittings laying around, so I thought I'd give them a go. You can see there with the tap, it's way longer just by the tap itself. Sticks out inches longer. There's a little barb fitting. Very likely I'll use that more than the tap. So you'd need two of those. That's a 1.5 inch TriClamp fitting and a 1/2 inch thread. So there it is with the tap. I mean, yeah, what I've got probably 2 inches longer than it would be with just the tap, but I mean I can take it off. I don't want to have that on all the time, of course. Now I actually think, you know, it's a little bit of overkill. A full ball valve to me is a little bit of overkill. Like typically I'd just have something like that and a piece of hose and one of my thumb screw valves on it. But some people love the taps, and that's okay. So you see what I mean? The movement you get, the longer they get, the scarier they get. And of course the only thing is, look, I can't just swap that over now because there's water in here. So I can't take that off. There's no stop valve. So if I take that off, water's just going to pour out. But there, you know, what I'd normally do is it'd be just about empty from brewing. There'd only be a little bit of hop and a little bit of gunk in it. Or you could even put the tap on brew day if you wanted to, and have it all ready for the end of brew day. Then once you're clean, take it off and store it and plug up the end or whatever you want to do. The other thing I've been looking at is if I want to make some custom fittings, like maybe a whirlpool arm, or I want to use some sort of a different hose to go into the top of the mash. Because one of the things with the G40 is they use different size fittings. Like most other brewery systems will use a 1/2 inch fitting, and everything's sort of 1/2 inch, and you can unscrew things and, you know, combine bits of pieces from other systems really easily. But when it comes to these latest Grainfathers at least. That's about a 3/8 inch, or it's a 9.5mm barb fitting that goes into the top of the system where your mash recirculation goes, and this is from the chiller. This happens to be the end for the chiller. So whenever you're trying to put in something a little bit different, none of your 1/2 inch fittings are going to fit. But I did find this. It's a little converter. It was the easiest one I could find. You can probably get these with like a threaded 1/2 inch bit on there if you want something with a thread on the end. But I'll just give you a little bit of a tip. My ones came and they were quite sharp on the barbs. If you use some of these ones you buy when they're new, sometimes they're quite sharp and you could really tear into that silicone fitting that's on the side of the Grainfather. So just grab some wet and dry and give it a bit of a sand. And you'll find within, I didn't do it much longer than that, and it was much smoother. And of course you can use a little bit of water. You wet them before you stick them in so they go in easier. But just make sure you've taken the edges off, because you don't want to rip the hell out of that silicone where it seals in there. But see, once I've got that in there, then my 1/2 inch hose will fit on there if I want to use any 1/2 inch fittings for anything, or whatever, the world's your oyster. If you did get one with the screw fitting, of course you can put an elbow on there and make some form of whirlpool arm, which I probably will do. But right now, this was more for the mash. I just want to experiment a little bit. I didn't want to cut up the one that came with it. I didn't want to cut up this one. I wanted to leave that hole. And of course you can probably find these fittings somewhere, but I couldn't find them easily. For my next mash, I'm going to play around a little bit, and I'm just going to try and stop what happens with when you're recircling and it sort of goes right around the edge of your mash pipe, the hose. I'm trying to keep it in the middle of the mash. This might make no difference at all, but you've got to experiment with these things. Alright, so I was thinking of something like, I can put that, it now fits nice and snugly into the recirc hole, and something like that on the end. I've only sort of, get rid of that sandpaper, I've only sort of, this is a mock-up. I did used to use this plastic in very early days in my mash tuns. It is heat safe to mash temperatures without a problem at all. But I haven't measured this length of this hose or anything to get it right. But I'm sort of just thinking of having it, that's probably way too long, and having that sitting on the top of the mash and just see how it goes. See if it makes a difference. It might not make any difference. It might make more splashing, but hopefully what I'm hoping it might make a little bit less. And this could be anything. Maybe I need to get a smaller T-piece, go smaller rather than large, or maybe no T-piece at all, and maybe just have that going down into a little bit of stainless fitting on the end just to keep it, down like that. Just ideas. This is one to try in my next brew. So there's the hole. There's the usual cord. And you shouldn't really put it in dry. It goes in much easier and comes out much easier wet. Whatever I choose, I'll try a few different things in the next mash probably. I can use that. The other good thing that something like this is for is cleaning things. Like I often, clean everything at once, like most people do, I think. You might have a bit of cleaner in there. I haven't got cleaner in here at the moment, but I'm about to put some in. I can get rid of that. It's only had hot water through it at the moment. But I'd use my stainless steel siphon, auto siphon. Now normally I'd just hook it up because everything fits together. Well, it's not that quite easy. Not quite that easy, I should say. I can take this off just to make it flow better. And clean that. I can take that apart if I like. I might even just loosen it off and leave that. There's a little marble in there. I might leave that in there. That can go in there. I'll put some cleaner in, but with this, now I can easily just moisten that and put it in. Can you see that? Hope so. And then I can put that on, and do my usual cleaning regime of, I can swap all my fittings around, whether I'm using my other counterflow chiller, which doesn't happen to be the Grainfather one, or my plate chiller or whatever, you know, I can use that adapter. And that's just going to make things a whole lot easier. If you're wondering why I've got these, because people know I have a hatred of, a hate of all sorts of siphons. I never used to like using them. That's why I never ever used demijohns much, only for really small batches. I just don't like them. I just don't like them. And they're a pain to clean. These auto ones are good. And sometimes I use it, if you haven't seen in my videos, to get the wort out of a no-chill cube. If I don't feel like picking up the cube, or if I'm trying to leave some of the junk behind in the cube, I'll use an auto siphon, just so I leave all the crud behind that I've accidentally transferred over to the cube. See, so now I can just I can turn the pump on, but I'll put some cleaner in here, and then I can pump cleaner through my auto siphon. Always cars have to go past, don't they? And also, after that's cleaned, I can try whatever I was going to try as a reset gum. You'd be better off with a clamp on some of these, especially on this bigger pipe. Or, as I said, I'd shorten this. I'd make that shorter. Maybe that could sit on top of the mash like that. Full bore. I wouldn't want it full bore though. I want to try and eliminate as much splashing as possible. That might work well. Just have it sitting in the middle there like that. Yeah. Or of course you get a steel one if you're worried. Or whatever you want to do. I wouldn't bother with a shower head or something like that. You know how people can do that. I wouldn't bother with that. That's a bit of overkill. And you're much more likely to get blocked if you do happen to get grain through somehow. There'll be no way this will block. The other thing I've talked about a whole lot is the 15 amp power cord. Well, it's finally here. I've got it. The original one comes with the old sticker of warning 10 amp only. And it's just, of course, your regular power plug. And of course the 15 amp one comes with your bigger 15 amp earth. So yeah, you can fit a 10 amp plug into a 15 amp plug, no worries, but you can't fit a 15 amp plug into a 10 amp plug. Now I've been running my G40 on a 15 amp circuit, but keep listening. Don't just go, oh, he's using it on 15 amp. No, on the G40, in the control panel, you can switch between 10 amp and 15 amp. So I've been waiting for the 15 amp cord to come before I try that. I didn't want to burn through the cord or void a warranty or something like that, you know. And you can see the cord is much thicker. That's the 15 amp one, of course. That's the 10 amp one. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into the details on the core size of the wire or anything like that. But you can see it is a much more substantial cable. And so what I'd probably do is, if you do go 15 amp, I'd probably hide the 10 amp cord, like put it away somewhere so you don't accidentally pick it up one day and use it on the 15 amp circuit, just in case it does overheat and melt or something. But yeah, so just to clear that up, I've got a dedicated 15 amp circuit here for my brewing, and I have been using, because I haven't really got much choice. It'll trip the power boards because everything else is running in the house and stuff. So I use the 15 amp with this 10 amp cord, but with the G40 switched in 10 amp mode. But I'm going to flick it over to 15 amp mode on the control panel and start using the 15 amp cord on my 15 amp circuit. So I'm going to get some water in just first off. I'm not brewing today, and I've got to heat some water up for cleaning, and we'll see how the boil goes, on 15 amp. Now to change it to 15 amp, we'll go into settings. Settings, hold the heat button down. Switching to 15 amp mode. This requires 15 amp outlet and a cable rated for 15 amp before continuing. Failing to comply might be a safety hazard. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. Set. And now it sets up here 15 amp. We're cooking with gas. Now I'm not going to go straight to the boil. I'm going to go to my target temp of 71 because that's usually about a strike temp that I would normally do. And we'll see how long it's going to take to get there. It is a 341. So heat, and there we go, 100% heat. The lid is on, but I'll leave the pump off for now. The temperature's rising nice and fast. Just going to leave that on recording for these last few minutes. It's 4:29. We'll just see when if that element power is going to drop down, or when it does. I'm sure it's about 2 degrees out from memory last time, but they have adjusted it. There's been a couple of updates. 6.5, and it was still at 100%. And as you can see, as we get 2 degrees before my set temp, it cuts back the power to the elements, and that's to stop you overshooting your mash step or your strike water temp, or whatever you've set it for. You can see now we dropped down to 60% as we're getting closer. Anyway, it's 4:33, so it's less than an hour, as I say, 50 minutes or so. 70. Oh, we're flicking between 70.5 and 71 now, and it's 4:34. So it was 3:41 when I started. So 50 minutes, under 55 minutes. That's good. That's a huge improvement. Huge improvement. And just to show you how much water I've got in there, it's full. Alright, let's get up to the boil, eh? So we can say 4:35. We're a bit cooler than what mash out would be. We'll see how long that takes to get up to the boil. Alright, we've just hit to boil. And it is 5:09. And we haven't dropped power. So they've fixed that up in the code, which is good. Yeah, 5:09. What was it, 3:41? That's good. That's about what it'd take normally for me to get to strike temp on 10 amp. You know, about an hour and a half to strike 10 amp. And I've got to boil in that stage. And it was 4:35 when we were at 71, which is lower than what you'd be at after mash out, of course. And you may as well say, yeah, 5:10. So about half an hour again, 35 minutes. Now I think that's more of a boil at the moment than what I was getting on the 10 amp. Like I used to get to 100 degrees on the 10 amp and it'd still take 15 minutes to get boiling. I'll just let it go a few minutes and we'll come back. 5:17, so it's been about 7 minutes or so since we got to 100 degrees, and the truth be told, the boil hasn't got much more vigorous, but from what I can tell, it's really hard to tell with water. It looks very different to wort boiling. I know that sounds weird, but it is, because you haven't got that foam on top that you see turning back in, but I can tell that that's boiling more vigorously than what it would have been on 10 amp by a mile. Quicker. Alright, be looking forward to doing a brew with it. I'll use this water for cleaning my cube. Got an empty cube here that needs cleaning. And And that's why I didn't mind filling it up and just doing a boil, so I could just fill that up with hot water, give it a clean. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. Sorry about the light earlier, it shines off the wife's car and it's in the afternoon now, or a few hours later anyway. So I'm happy. Things were much faster. Yeah, you can run it on 10 amp, it'll work fine. I still got up my 3 or 4 litres boil off when it was full for a double batch, etc. But, you know, it works. It's working now, things just happen faster. So look, at a rough guess, I'd say about 30% faster. Instead of an hour and a half to get to strike from cold water, it was about 55 minutes. And it got to, from 71 degrees to boil much faster than normal. So that's good, that's a good thing. Have to wait till the mash to try out my other toy I made for the recirc. But now I've got to empty this. When I give it a little bit of a rinse at the end, I can try out the bottom TriClamp fittings. Alright, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Thanks to my patrons, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.